Good morning. Hello, everybody. I may not be ready for this, but I was really trying to do it before the sun came up. I think we're pretty close to that right now. Hope you're having a good morning so far. And again, I apologize. I'm kind of here by myself and trying to make all this stuff work. So if something doesn't work, you need to put it in the little comment section over there, and maybe I'll look at it. A couple of things here. One, I don't know exactly what you may be wrestling with these days, but if you're like most people, you're wrestling with something. I mean, there's definitely something there. Maybe you wrestle with the fear that comes from disease or other health issues, or maybe you wrestle with finances and the shape of our economy and its future. I don't know. Maybe you wrestle with the wicked and selfish acts of other people and the influence that they have over our world and community these days. Or maybe you wrestle with poor politics and self-centered politicians. I've heard a few people say, is this all we have to choose from when it comes to elections, both local and national? Is this all we have to choose from? Are these our only options to lead a nation and to lead people, to lead a state, or to lead the community? And if you wrestle with any of these things, this few minutes might be helpful to you. There was another guy who wrestled with God concerning difficult circumstances. I know you remember the story of Jacob. Jacob certainly wrestled with God, but Habakkuk did the same thing. His name literally means embracer or a wrestler. Embrace as in a wrestling hold. We really don't know much about Habakkuk beyond these 3 short chapters in the Old Testament, but I will show you. I'll show you the wrestling part here in just a second. But first, the purpose of this book, Habakkuk, is basically twofold: to warn Judah, the nation of Israel, broken up into 2 different sections at that time, but to warn Judah of its coming judgment at the hand of Chaldea, which would be like the unrighteous, unbelieving pagans of that day. But the other purpose behind it was to comfort Judah, who is God's people, concerning the ultimate destruction of the Chaldeans, who represent the ungodly and the unrighteous, the enemy of God and the enemy of God's people. So the theme of this prophecy is the judgment of God on his own people, and then their ultimate vindication when God judges the ungodly. So here is the frustration of Habakkuk. It is called the burden, which the prophet did see in Habakkuk 1:1. That it's called the burden there. If you're looking at the King James or the New King James, it's called a burden. And you should know that there are a lot of people who are seeing the same things in our day, right now. They're seeing the same things that you and I are seeing that's going on around us and in our world, but they don't feel any burden for it at all. They're not troubled by it. In fact, they're motivated by it, and it's different. I believe it's always going to be different for believers and those who are trusting in God. So the prophet sees the issues, and his heart breaks for justice. He prays for God to intervene. He's broken. It's a burden to see the things happening in his world that were happening at that time. So in verse 2, Habakkuk 1, verse 2, he says, "O Lord, how long shall I cry, and you will not hear? Even cry out to you violence, and you will not save." He's saying, like you may be saying, God, we're asking, we're praying for you to intervene, yet it is almost as if you are not listening. Now, one, we know that is not true. God is always listening to his people. God is always hearing the cries of the righteous. But secondly, he is amazed at the violence and the unreasonableness of the people. And these, if you remember, are the chosen people of God. So he's shocked at the violence and the unreasonableness of this people. Then verse 3, "Why do you show me iniquity and cause me to see trouble? For plundering and violence are before me. There is strife and contention arises." Habakkuk is obviously tired of seeing the outright, unashamed sins of the people, the wickedness, the craziness that seems to be happening. They're looting, they're stealing, they're fighting, and they get into these endless arguments. These people be crazy. Hard to understand the motivation of the wicked. I don't know if that sounds familiar to you, but Habakkuk was going through that. I think that that's some of the stuff that we struggle with today. How is it? Everywhere we look, there's more sin, there's more unrighteousness, there's more ungodliness and difficult things. In verse 4, he said, therefore let the powerless, and therefore the law is powerless, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, therefore perverse judgment proceeds. It seems like the law in his day had no power to control the rise of lawlessness. They had a law, but nobody was following that law. And because of that, lawlessness just kept growing. And he said there's no place for judgment or for justice for those who break the law. There's no consequence to breaking the law. There's no consequence for being crazy and doing those things. So they could even take over what was not theirs and call it an autonomous zone, basically. And there's no opposing power in the law or justice to resolve the issues of lawlessness. Now, that's why Habakkuk really impressed me in the words and the way that he was dealing with that, and speaks so much to us. The wicked, he said, overpower the righteous, and the only judgment that comes from it is more perversity and more wickedness. Even the lawgivers or the lawmakers or the law enforcers are not doing the right thing, and it seems like more and more that which was commonly known as sane becomes insane. And so verse 5, and then God speaks and he says, look among the nations and watch, be utterly astounded, for I will do a work in your days which you will not believe, though it were told you. Even if you hear about it, even if God said, even if somebody came and told you about it, even if I came and told you about it, you probably wouldn't believe it. He's saying, look around, look at the nations and the different people groups around the world, and be prepared to be amazed. God said, I am doing a work. I'm doing it in your days, and on the surface, you probably won't understand. And so, I mean, can you see this? Can you feel how this is kind of leading us to a place where we're either going to trust him and believe him by faith, not by sight, or we're not. We're only going to look at the things that we can see with our eyes. God's talking about using the wicked people, the Chaldeans, the Chaldea, to wake up his own people in judgment. How can God use the wicked? Can we conceive of the thought that God is using wicked people in our days, in our time, through these circumstances that we're going through? Can we even begin to think that way for just a moment? But maybe God is using wicked people to wake up the church, to bring his people to repentance, to revive an army of faith, so that we can put our eyes back on him, so that we put our trust back in him, the God of our salvation. Chapter 2 then comes. There's a whole lot of details in here that I have to leave out, and a whole lot of things. But I want to just hopefully motivate you to look and read for yourself and to understand even between the lines of what I'm saying. Chapter 2, verse 1, Habakkuk says he positions himself to watch for God and listen for God's answer. He says in Habakkuk 2:1, I will stand my watch and set myself on the rampart or the tower and watch to see what he will say to me and what I will answer when I am corrected. He is saying, I will put myself in a position to hear and see what God is going to do. Maybe, Habakkuk said, maybe I need to be corrected. I will take it as God gives it. And maybe there's something that we as God's people should consider also. Maybe we need to be corrected. Maybe our attitude is wrong and our way of thinking is wrong right now. Maybe we are fighting for our own rights and for the future of a nation, when God is saying my plan is bigger than just you. God, and he's saying my plan is bigger than just for a nation. Good morning, Bruce, and good morning, Sarah. Glad you guys are on there. Glad I'm not the only one up this early in the morning. Love you guys, everybody. When Habakkuk puts himself in a position to hear from God, God makes it all more clear. So maybe that's one of the things that we should consider doing, is putting ourselves into a position to hear more clear what God is saying. Even if we don't understand, we may not even agree with it, but I believe that God will begin to make it more clear if we will watch, if we'll put ourselves into a position to watch for God and to listen for God's answer. And then Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2 says, "And the Lord gave me an answer and said, put the vision in writing and make it clear on stones so that the reader may go quickly," basically to prepare for what is coming. Verse 3, "For the vision is still for the fixed time, for a certain time, and it is moving quickly to the end, and it will not be false. Even if it is slow in coming, wait for it, because it will certainly come. It will not be kept back." God is giving a warning to those who are willing to listen, that we should prepare ourselves for what is coming. That's what he was saying in Habakkuk's day. Write it out, make it clear, so that those who read it can prepare themselves for what is to come. This is the time. This is the time, he said. We should be learning more about God in our day, in our troubles, in our things that we're facing right now. I don't know how bad it'll get. I don't think anybody does. It may not get worse. It may get better. Everything may turn around tomorrow. I'm not sure. But what I do know is this is the time that we should be learning more about God and doing what we learn. It is clear to us that God has made a priority in the New Testament about loving him and loving other people. And the reason for all that is that none should perish, but that all would come to repentance and to a saving knowledge of God. God has made his purpose very clear in this world. And for us as believers, we know what we need to do. It's hard sometimes not to get caught up in the adversity and the conflict that's going on around us. There is something that we can do. We can learn how to love God more. The more we learn about him, the more we read about God, the more we understand the things of God, I think the more useful we will be in helping other people come to that very same conclusion where God said that it's not his will that any should perish. God doesn't want any to perish. He wants all to come to repentance. He says the vision, Habakkuk was saying, the vision here is for an appointed time. What you're seeing, what we read, what we hear, what we're going through right now is for an appointed time. God already knows what is going to happen. And God already knows when it will happen. We, though, should not be lulled to sleep just because we don't see it right now. We don't fully understand what is coming or when it's coming, but it is coming. And that's what he says. You can't lose sight of that. You have to keep your focus on the idea that God is going to do exactly what God said he's going to do in his word, and we should learn for it. He said, verse 3, wait for it. You may want to get ahead of God at times, but he said, wait for it. Don't try to force it on your own. Let's not try to force whatever it is that God is totally working out here. I don't think that we see it yet. I don't think we fully understand yet, but wait for it. Don't try to force it. Don't fight against the thing that God is doing that you don't understand. Just keep waiting for it. We can get into arguments. I don't know about any of you, but there have been some things that have come up in recent history that has really made me want to make some comments on Facebook. But I didn't, and I won't. All right, verse 4, chapter 2. He said, behold the proud. God says, my soul has no pleasure in him, but the just shall live by faith. Coffee, anybody? Hi, Christy. Good morning. Behold the proud. God says, my soul has no pleasure in him, but the just shall live by faith. Let's not get caught up in our pride, so much so that we forget God. God will judge the proud. He will judge the wicked, and he will vindicate the righteous. He tells us that. He promises us that. It may not be when you want. It may not come the way that you want. God is not asking for our permission, nor is he asking us for our opinion on when and how God will bring judgment. Good morning, Julie. I don't know if I can overstress that point, Yeah, people ask me sometimes what I think about this thing that's happening or that thing that's happening, and I said nobody cares what I think. Nobody cares what I think. My opinion is just another opinion out there. Look, when it comes to what God is doing, there's my brother Andy West in Arkansas. Good morning, brother. When it comes to the things that God is doing, He's not asking for our opinion. Our only hope, our only best hope, is to get close enough to God that we can see what He is doing and then play a role in the final outcome that God is building toward, which has everything in the world to do with other people coming to Christ, other people giving their life to Christ. What He's asking us is live by faith. Just live by faith. The proud He's going to judge. The proud He's going to bring down. But for us, we should learn to live by faith. If you're willing to live by faith and trust Him, even when you don't understand, even when things look bad, and it feels like all sanity is gone, God will give you peace. I'm convinced. And God will give you a purpose in life that will go beyond just the things that you see and hear on the news and other things that are going on around you. Make the most of this time. Make the most of this time that we have right now, because there is an appointed time. In God's appointed time, all things are going to change. We're going to see some things that may be unbelievable. We wouldn't believe it if somebody told us about it ahead of time, but God says there's an appointed time, and it's coming, and we have to keep our focus on that. Well, that's really what I wanted to share with you guys this morning, and hopefully you will share this message with somebody else, because there is hope in the Lord. There is peace in a relationship with Him, and we can get there. I believe that we can know Him better, and we can accomplish far more if we are walking with Him. Well, until next time, which would probably be Friday morning, hopefully before the sun comes up. You can see when the sun starts coming up, everything starts glaring in here. I was going to do it outside, but I was a little too late getting started. Love you guys. Hope all goes well for you today. God bless you. Bye-bye.